Josh Bennett proposed to Megan in a parking lot, in a Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 8 months, holding a ring he'd paid off in 4 installments because that's what the jewelry counter let him do. He hadn't planned the parking lot. He'd planned a nicer restaurant, actually, and lost his nerve twice in the lobby before they'd even been seated, so he did it in the car instead, engine running, heat barely working, because waiting one more night felt impossible. They'd met 3 years earlier working the same shift at a diner off Route 9, Josh bussing tables, Megan on the register, splitting a single burger after close because neither paycheck stretched to 2. She still remembers exactly what he ordered to go with it, nothing, because ordering a drink too would have meant asking her to cover it, and he wasn't going to do that on a first almost date. She remembers laughing so hard at something he said that a piece of fry nearly came out her nose, and him laughing harder at that than at his own joke. That's the couple this story is actually about. Not the house. Not the SUV. Them, in a Honda, in a parking lot, laughing about a ring that cost for payments instead of one. Megan grew up watching her mother count exact change at a grocery register while a line built up behind her, her mother's ears going red, never her face, like she'd trained the blush to hide somewhere less visible. Megan remembers the free lunch line at school, and exactly which kids noticed, and exactly how their faces looked when they did, not cruel, usually, just a specific kind of curious that felt worse than cruelty somehow. She promised herself, quietly, the way kids make promises they don't yet know how expensive they'll turn out to be, that her own children would never once stand in that line, or any line that looked like it from the outside. Josh's first sales manager told him something in his second month on the job that he never once questioned again: nobody buys from a guy who looks like he needs the commission. Josh believed it completely, the same way a person believes the first true-sounding thing someone hands them at 24, standing in a break room still wearing a tie he borrowed from his father. He got good at the job. He also got good at looking like a man who didn't need it, long before he could actually afford to look that way, and for years nobody, including Josh, could tell the difference between the two things from the outside. 6 years and 1 daughter later, Josh and Megan Bennett had, by every visible measure, made it. A 4-bedroom house in a subdivision with a stone sign out front and a name like a golf course. A leased SUV, always the current year's model, always washed before the weekend. A trip somewhere with a beach in it, twice a year, captioned in a font Megan picked specifically because it matched her feed. Their daughter Lily's birthday parties had themes, a different one every year, dinosaurs this time, unicorns the year before. Their photos got the kind of comments that feel like a scoreboard if you let them, and Megan let them, most days, without quite admitting to herself that she was keeping score. Almost none of it was paid for the way it looked paid for. The SUV was a lease, rolled into a new one every 3 years before the mileage caught up to them. The old one traded in upside down more often than not, a fact the finance manager mentioned once, gently, and Josh chose not to hear. The renovated kitchen, the one with the marble Megan photographed in better light than any other room in the house, came out of a home equity line of credit with a rate that moved whenever the bank felt like moving it, a fact neither of them had thought much about. The year rates were still low. The vacations went on a card that carried a balance most months, minimum payment on auto pay, actual balance never quite looked at directly, tucked 2 screens deep in an app neither of them opened unless they had to. None of this felt reckless while it was happening. That's the part almost nobody believes until they've lived inside it. Every single purchase, in the moment it got made, felt like exactly what a family like theirs was supposed to do, the natural next rung on a ladder they'd never actually agreed they were climbing. A financial firm found, a couple years back, that 3 in 5 Americans pay closer attention to how their friends spend than to how their friends save. Josh and Megan weren't reading that study. They didn't need to. They were living the data point, one Sunday brunch photo at a time, without ever once framing it to themselves as a decision they were making. Then the rate on the helic reset, quietly, the way these things always reset. A letter in the mail neither of them opened the same week it arrived, sitting under a stack of school flyers for 11 days before Megan finally noticed the balance in the banking app had started climbing without either of them spending $1 more. And 4 months later, Josh's whole division got cut in a single afternoon, a video call, 60 seconds, 11 years of loyalty ending with a link to an exit benefits portal and a calendar invite for an exit interview he never bothered attending. Josh sat in his car in the driveway for 40 minutes before he went inside that day, rehearsing 3 different ways to say it to Megan and liking none of them. They didn't tell anyone. Not their parents, not their friends, not the group chat that still planned brunch every other Sunday. Megan kept posting. It felt, at the time, like the only piece of the life she still had any control over, one square at a time, curated, unbothered, exactly the opposite of how the kitchen actually felt at 10 o'clock most nights. Lily's 6th birthday landed 6 weeks after the layoff. Megan had already booked the entertainer. Already ordered the balloon arch, already picked the font for the invitations. Neither of them could quite bring themselves to cancel a 6-year-old's party over money neither of them had said out loud to a single other adult yet. Canceling would have meant explaining, and explaining was the one thing they still weren't ready to do. The backyard was full by 2 o'clock. 20 kids, twice that many parents, a bounce house rented for the occasion, a dinosaur-shaped cake Megan had photographed from 4 different angles before anyone was allowed to cut it, the light exactly right for once. Josh was refilling a cooler when he heard the flatbed pull up out front, engine idling a beat too long for a passing car. He knew before he got to the driveway. The SUV lease was 3 payments behind, and no amount of hoping had made that fact optional. He'd meant to call the finance company that week. He'd meant to call it the week before, too, and the week before that. The tow driver was polite about it, professional, doing a job he'd clearly done 100 times that year alone. Auto repossessions hit levels in 2025 not seen since the Great Recession, over 3 million vehicles nationwide, and Josh's SUV was about to become one more line in that number, in front of every parent from Lily's kindergarten class at once, mid-slice of dinosaur cake. Megan came around the side of the house just as the SUV cleared the driveway, hazards blinking, 20 kids and their parents watching a flatbed do its work in real time, a few phones instinctively coming up before their owners caught themselves and put them back down. Nobody said anything cruel. Nobody had to. The silence did that on its own, stretching a beat too long across a backyard that had, 90 seconds earlier, been the loudest place in the neighborhood. Lily, 6 years old and mostly just confused about why the fun car was leaving, asked her mother where their SUV was going. Megan didn't have an answer ready. She'd had 4 years to build one and had spent every bit of that time building something else instead. That night, after the last guest's car finally pulled away, after Lily was asleep with cake frosting still somehow behind one ear, Josh and Megan sat at the kitchen island, the marble one, the photogenic one, the one that had never once appeared in a photo with anything as ordinary as a stack of unopened mail on it, and said out loud, to each other, for the first time in 6 years, the actual number. $41,000, spread across the helic, the card, and a lease they no longer even had the vehicle for. Neither of them had ever seen it added up in one place until that night, Josh reading numbers off 3 different apps while Megan wrote them down on the back of a party invitation, because it was the only paper within reach. "I've been so scared of looking like we were struggling," Megan said, "that I never once let us actually talk about struggling. Not even to each other. I was managing the feed better than I was managing us." Josh didn't have a clean response to that. He just reached over and took the pen out of her hand for a second, held it, and admitted the thing he'd been carrying alone in that car in the driveway for 6 weeks. "I've been pretending I still had a job description I could explain at parties," he said. "I didn't even correct anyone tonight when Frank asked how work was going. I just said busy." They saw a financial counselor named Priya the following week, the same office a friend of a friend had quietly recommended months earlier, and neither of them had called. Priya had seen this exact shape before, more times than she probably wanted to count, and didn't so much as blink at the number on their intake form. "There's a name for what happened here," she told them, sliding a legal pad across the desk. "Researchers call it money dysmorphia, a distorted picture of your own finances built from constantly comparing them to everyone else's highlight reel. 95% of Americans who experience it end up worse off financially because of it. 82% feel like they're behind, no matter what their actual numbers say. You too weren't behind. You were invisible to yourselves, because every mirror you were checking was somebody else's house, staged by somebody else, hiding exactly what yours was hiding." She let that settle for a second before she said the rest of it. "The house you were actually building this whole time was real. It just wasn't the one either of you were photographing." She helped them build a budget around the family actually sitting in that kitchen, not the 120 comments a post had quietly been grading them against. The kitchen renovation stayed, it was paid for now, sunk cost, no sense pretending otherwise. The lease didn't come back. They bought a 5-year-old sedan with cash saved from 3 months of not performing anything for anybody, and Josh drove it to his new job without once feeling the urge to apologize for it out loud. Megan's account went private for a while, then came back slower, smaller, mostly pictures of Lily with dirt on her knees instead of a filtered dining room, catching maybe a tenth of the likes the old version used to. They still meet friends for brunch most Sundays. They split an appetizer sometimes now, the way they used to at that diner, and neither of them performs embarrassment about it anymore. Frank asked about work again a few weeks later, and Josh just told him the truth, plainly, and nothing bad happened because he did. Josh still has the receipt from that first burger, folded soft in an old wallet in a drawer, for dollars and change for 2 people who didn't have it and split it anyway. He takes it out sometimes, now, and doesn't feel nostalgic exactly. He feels something closer to relief, that whatever they actually are, underneath 20 comments and a leased grill, was sitting right there in a Honda parking lot the whole time, waiting for them to stop financing their way past it.